Make someone happy, make just one someone happy, make just one heart the heart you sing to.
As any follower of our program knows, the great Betty Comden passed away recently, and we want to pay tribute to her tonight. Here to introduce our guest is my co-host, Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
Betty Comden was on the show a couple of times, and we're going to show you some excerpts from those interviews in a few minutes. But first we want to talk about her work in the theater and her life in the theater with a celebrated lyricist in her own right. Susan Birkenhead won a Tony Award for Jelly's Last Jam, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Tony nomination.
Tony nomination, should have been the award. And someone who knew Betty Comden very, very well and was a great admirer of hers. When did you first meet Betty?
When I first began to work with Julie Stein, which was almost at the very beginning of my career, and Julie took me on as a sort of mentor and as a collaborator. And Betty and Adolph, whom I met almost immediately afterwards, came over to talk to me, and like two, mother hens.
Yeah. Always inseparable, Betty and Adolph.
Always inseparable. And Betty was unbelievably kind, and she said, "Don't worry, I'll tell you how to navigate this one." And,
she meant Julie Stein?
And she did. I mean, she was wonderful.
Because I got the sense in interviewing her over the years and watching her with Adolph that she was the calm one. The disciplined one. Adolph was always flying around up here, making the jokes, cracking wisecracks, all this stuff. Julie Stein the same way. But Betty, you got the sense when it came down to do the writing, Betty was the one who got out the pencil and the notepad and sat down and focused the people on the show. Was that a fair assessment of the way she worked?
I think so. They were never really specific about how they worked together.
No, they were very mysterious.
Yeah,
very mysterious.
Are you guys disciplined writers? Were you always disciplined writers? You work. We had Candor Nebb on not long ago, and they said they meet every day and they write. And is that the way you do it too?
Yeah.
The only way you can do it.
We meet every day. Yeah.
Where do you meet?
Usually my house.
Betty's.
I have most of our papers and records and things to refer to. So we just get there and meet.
And how does it work? You just bounce ideas off each other, or you roam the halls? And
very boring to watch people say, "We want to photograph you working."
We just
two
picture
people,
two people groaning.
staring at each other.
That's
full of action. Yeah.
But if you could just sort of take us into the room, though. I mean, you guys have read the greatest musicals of all time. How do you do it? What's the magic?
You want some coffee or decaf? Or you want a grape, perhaps?
Right.
We have this sort of rule over the years that it's called nothing's wasted, because you spend hours just, we stare at each other and there's terrible silence and gloom, and at the end of the day we sort of leave. But if we don't do that, we feel the breakthrough time, won't come, because it does come.
That's sort of the gestation period, I guess. Even if you're not writing, something still sort of...
you keep thinking.
But I think, and this is only conjecture, I think that Adolph paced around the room madly, and Adolph came up with wonderful ideas, and Betty probably more often than not wrote them down, put them into words. That's not to say that Adolph didn't contribute lyrics and words, but I think that he was, that the ideas sprang from him.
How did that partnership stay together for about 60 years?
Oh my God, it was like a marriage.
What
It really
kept that
was.
together? What was the core that kept that together?
Well, first of all, when you collaborate with someone and you live through, the wars, the musical theater wars, the bond that develops is extremely close. My husband, when when my collaborator calls, hands me the phone and says, "Your other husband is on the phone." And
my husband does that too.
I think that's the way it was with Betty and Adolph. I used to watch them when Adolph was really getting on. They would come to council meetings at the Dramatists Guild. And we always have lunch before the council meeting. And Adolph had lost his sight. I think he had macular degeneration. And Betty was incredibly tender with him in the way that my mother used to be with my father. And, you know, she'd sort of tuck his napkin in over here, and she'd guide his hand sometimes. And it was, you know, heartbreaking and wonderful to see.
Do you think the fact that Betty was a woman and Adolph was a man
Yes.
kept that together? That if for 60 years maybe two men couldn't have been, well, you have Candor and Ab and other long-standing ones, but still that there was something about the male-female thing that she could defer to him and keep going with him.
You know, I'm not really sure, because it was so much, they were so much like husband and wife.
And we should say he had his other for real life wife,
That's
Phyllis
right.
Newman, and
Phyllis,
she had a husband
who
also,
was but they bickered like a married couple. They made up like a married couple. And of course, the thing that really broke my heart was after Adolph died, at Adolph's memorial, Betty got up to speak, and I can never tell this story without breaking up. And she looked around, she looked lost, and she said, this is very hard. I've never done this without Adolph.
Yeah, I remember that. It was really very touching. That.
And she did it again at the Dramatists Guild Gala, and she did it again at a party, and she, you know, she was literally lost without him.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about their lyric writing, being a lyricist yourself. What is it? Is there a kind of hallmark of a Comden Green lyric? And
Yes,
what is
it's
that?
called wit.
Yes.
Remember wit?
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, they had. Betty was an elegant woman. She was elegant. You know, when she walked into a room, she was elegant, but she had an elegant mind and a killer wit, as did Adolph. But Betty's wit was, you know, staggering. It was she'd mutter something under her breath, you know, and it was golden and funny. And that was really the hallmark of their stuff, although they could write, you know, wonderful
tender
love
songs.
songs, and, you know, even
Sad songs, the party's over, beautiful.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Even a song like Make Someone Happy. Simple, but oh my Lord.
Fame, if you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to? Love is the answer. Someone to love is the answer.
Once you found him, build your world around him.
Make someone happy. Make just one someone happy, and you will be happy too.
With the death of Betty Comden, have we really lost now all of the major figures of that era on Broadway, that golden age? I mean, Arthur Lawrence is still with us.
Yeah,
But,
Arthur is, and
Steve Sondheim was he was kind of a kid, so
yeah.
he was just getting into it maybe at the end of that era?
I think so. I'm trying to think of all those people who used to be at those parties. They were all at
you
this-
knew them all, right? When you were a youngster, you know, all these wonderful legends were all
Well,
around you.
because the first person I worked with was Mary Rogers, and she took me to some of those parties, and they were all, you know, Betty and Adolph and Leonard Bernstein, I think had just died. I think he was no longer there. But Steve Sondheim, Lauren Bacall.
Oh, yeah.
It was a whole little group, sort of a very bright, very witty.
What were those parties
people.
like? They must have been
Crazy.
Every image you have of the most sophisticated New York party.
To tell you the truth, I sort of sat there, you know, with my mouth hanging open, just thinking, I'm sitting here in the middle of all of these people. I can't believe it.
And did they play the piano and sing to each other? And
No.
They didn't.
No, not at any of the parties I was at. No,
Oh, that's
There was a
interesting.
lot of very
Julie Stein
sort of
didn't perform?
witty. Oh, Julie was not part of that group
Oh, I see,
either.
I see.
Julie's parties, Julie always played.
Okay.
Always played. And he would make me sit on the bench next to him and he would play, you know. And Betty and Adolph, you know,
They like to
performed.
perform.
They love to perform. In fact, on the 20th century, I was told, was something that they performed at parties. And it was just, you know, something they had concocted, and they would perform it at parties. They loved to perform. And I think it was Hal's idea
Hal Prince.
to do it, yeah, to actually just go ahead and do it. And they did. And of course, it was wildly successful.
Yeah.
Well, I said, like, they tell the story that Just in Time was one of those things that there was the La 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 song that
Well,
they
I'll tell you
performed
what
at
Just in
parties.
Time was. It was that Sidney Chaplin had a
Couldn't.
vocal range like that.
There are 3 notes, just in time.
Exactly.
Well, we talked to Julie about doing a very simple tune. We even used the words Vincent Youmans, didn't we? Something, you know, like da da da, T for two, and we just said maybe we should have some very simple melodies.
And he said, "How
Julie,
about
this?
this?"
And he went to the piano and
Played
started.
dee-da-da, we said, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then we had it for many months simply as dee-da-dum, da-dee-da-da-da-dum, because we couldn't find a place to put it. We didn't have the name of the song. We didn't have the words. And it was just there, but it became a big hit in living rooms because Julie played it. Listen to this. He kept playing the song, just the melody, and people loved it. It became very popular. Then finally, when we were working one day on the book, we found a situation, and we said, well, this is where the hero, the young guy, realized that this girl
That she
saved his
came
life.
along at the right moment.
Yeah, and then we found the words that fit the music, just in time.
Just in time, I found you just in time. Before you came, my time was running low.
I was lost, the losing dice were tossed. My bridges all were crossed, nowhere to go.
Now you're here, and now I know just where I'm going. No more doubt or fear, I found my way. For love came just in time
You found me just in time
and changed my lonely life that lovely day.
Absolutely. That's really just great
Yeah.
writing. So anyway, we've got some more
More Betty Comden.
more interviews with Betty Comden we'd like to show you now, and we want to thank Susan Birkenhead for giving us some insights into her life and into her work. Let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the beginning. What were you studying at NYU?
Well, I was a major in dramatic arts, and
You'd always been interested in the theater in
I
high
wasn't
school?
sure what I was interested in, and I thought maybe I'd be a teacher, and I used to write things, you know, as a kid and everything.
What sorts
and
of
I wasn't
things?
sure. Well, it's poems sometimes, and little essays and that kind of thing. But I didn't really focus on the theater. But secretly, I think I wanted to be an actress, but I didn't think I was good-looking enough, and I was shy and so forth. But
You only look
when
like Greta
when
Garbo.
I did, thank you. When I didn't get into Barnard, I looked at this brochure from NYU, and I said, okay. So I went to the dramatic arts
So
department.
that was probably the key to your success, is not getting into Barnard.
Yeah, I always tell, when I make graduation speeches, I always tell high school kids that, don't worry about the school you didn't get into. You know?
So where did you meet Adolph Green? Or
Well, I met him there. He was not a student there, but a mutual friend thought that we'd get along well and we liked the same thing, so we brought him down after school one day. And
Were
I
they
met
setting
him.
this up as a date, as a blind date
No,
kind of thing?
no, no. I don't think we thought in those terms whatsoever, and never did actually. But we just, you know, we met, and then it was some time ago. After that, I mean, then we were both looking for work in the theater. You know, in those days, you went from office to office, producers' offices and agents' offices, and I ran into Adolph, you know, one day, and then we sort of got together with some other young people who were couldn't get work. We never got a job in the theater, never. But Adolph had met Judy Holliday the summer before, and then we found out that this place, the Village Vanguard, would put on a show on a Sunday night, and that we'd each get $5. So
Overpaid,
that was it.
$5,
Yeah.
I think you once said.
Huh?
And you started writing out of necessity, right?
Yes.
Because you didn't have writers to...
Well, we couldn't afford material. The first show we did a couple of Noel Coward numbers
Mm-hmm.
and a Dorothy Parker story and a scene from They Shall Not Die. Or something. And then, you know, someone said, you've got to pay royalties for this kind of thing, and having no money. As we often say, we chipped in and bought a pencil. And that's when we began to write.
now, you guys are both from New York, correct? You both
Yes,
born and
I'm from
raised in
Brooklyn,
New York?
and
I'm
he's
from the Bronx.
So you didn't have to travel too far to start your careers on Broadway, right?
Oh, except we had to travel those billions of impossible miles.
Well, let's talk about those billions of impossible miles when you were first starting out. On the Town was the first show.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You were kids.
Yes, well,
More or less,
relatively.
yes.
Yeah.
Mozart-wise, not that young.
But we
We were
had been a sort of a strange club act for many years,
You
5
began
years.
almost
or
5
Down at the
years.
Village Vanguard, right?
Before,
Right.
before On the
Yes.
Town, all that was.
Oh yes, you
With
bet.
Judy
with
Holliday,
Holliday,
of course.
and we were a much admired act. A lot of people were crazy about us, but somehow, since there were so many of us, and it was, I guess, on a higher level than ordinary, we're pioneers of being at a somewhat higher level. we got booked only sporadically.
Very
at places.
sporadically.
Yes.
New York, we did quite well. Out of town, forget it, really. It
Yes,
was a
yeah.
disaster.
Disaster in terms of bookings, or just the show
well,
didn't
bookings,
go over well?
it
out of
didn't
town?
go over once we got the bookings. It was very hard because we had, at one point, we were played on a New Year's Eve and were fired after the first show. I mean, they didn't even get through the whole evening.
Yeah.
But it was fairly sophisticated, very funny.
Yeah, and it was a hell of an act, just impossible to classify for a lot of people.
Hard to call it an act,
But
but
it
that's
must-
Yeah.
really where we began to write and perform
Yes.
I was
at
going
the
to say, that
same
must have been a
time.
great training ground for you, though, to
Yeah.
be doing a review. And were you writing fast and writing all the time? And if you needed a new sketch, you had only a few minutes to put it together. And
Well, there
Sometimes,
was
yeah.
pressure, sure.
Yeah.
It was good. And we learned a lot. Yeah.
No, they were pretty carefully written,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
And I think we thought of ourselves more as performers than writers.
Right. Right.
Really?
Because we wrote in order to have something to perform, since we couldn't afford to pay royalties to anybody
of course.
else.
What was the name of that group?
The
Reviewers.
reviewers.
The Reviewers.
It was a pioneer act of its kind. The Village Vanguard had no entertainment. They didn't even have a liquor license.
when did you graduate from reviews to
Well,
full-fledged
With that
Broadway?
show,
because
yeah.
we were friends of Leonard
He
Bernstein.
was a very
why
old,
Adolph
dear
Green.
friend of mine.
And then we
that
met
is,
at
yeah.
the Vanguard, and he became a close friend. He
Right.
knew our material so well that when we'd forget a lyric, we'd call him up and say to him, and he'd remembered everything.
He always
every
remembered
word.
Did your first show come easy to you, or was it a struggle to learn how to write a book to a big Broadway musical?
Well, no, it was a struggle
It was a struggle.
to write at all. It wasn't. Yeah, we learned as we went along.
We've never written ballads or songs
Right.
with emotion because we wrote satirical numbers,
Yeah.
comedy songs, and sketches. That's all. So this was the first time to write songs with heart.
It wasn't that easy to come by, and yet, but the whole thing was written in a period of less than 5 months. So we whatever we learned fast.
But your careers then went off into a different direction. I mean, you became writers.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there must have been a part of you, though, that wanted to keep up with the acting, to be the performer.
course.
What
Of
happened?
course.
Why didn't it go that way?
I think we made choices there. You know, we didn't want to be constrained by the subject matter to always have parts for ourselves. It was pretty
Yes.
much that. We did go off on a different tack until we decided to do this evening of our own material. But much later on, 59, I think,
Yeah.
was the first time we did it.
And it felt very good indeed.
Yeah, we loved doing it.
I said good morning to the sun, good morning to the hills, good morning to the chickies and the hens.
I said good morning to the cows, good morning to the roosters, good morning to the piggies in their pens. Good morning
to everything in sight.
And by the time I got through with saying good morning, it was time to say
Good night to the sun, good night to the hills, good night to the chickies and the hens.
I said good night to the cows, good night to the roosters, good night to the piggies in their pens. Good night, good night.
everything that's born. And by the time I got through with saying goodnight, it was time to say
good morning to the sun, good morning to the hills, good morning to the chickies and the hens.
I said good morning to the cows, good morning to the roosters, good morning to the piggies in their pens.
Good morning to everything in sight. And by the time I got through with saying good morning, it was
Time to say good night to the sun, good night to the hills, good night to the chickies and the hens.
I said good night to the cows, good night to the roosters, good night to the piggies in their pens.
good night to everything that's born. And by the time I got through with saying good night, it was
Time to say go away to the sun, go away to the hills, go away to the chickies and the hens.
I said go way to the cows, go way to the roosters, go way to the piggies in their pens.
go away, go lie there in a heap. Because I'm tired of saying good night and good morning, and I've got to get some sleep.
You and Adolph Green are best known for your fizzy, light touch with New York. But the musical darkened with people like Stephen Sondheim and Michael Bennett. Have you ever regretted the way the musical has changed at all, or would you like to pull it back to make it a little more light and fizzy and fun? I mean, your reaction to these sort of big Sunset Boulevard, heavy.
No, fizzy, light, frothy. You know, I mean, I know that's what you say, but we have written songs like Some Other Time and Lonely Town. And I think there's a deep thread of real feeling in what we do. I think comedy is very hard to do.
Indeed.
And that back of what we do, I think, is a real feeling for human values and a dislike for any kind of pretense. And so I don't think they're that inconsequential.
No, I would.
That's what I say about my work and Adolph's work.
And also, writing fizzy, fun, and free is, as you say, difficult to do.
Very difficult.
What accounts for your ability to get along with each other, you and Adolph Green, all these years?
You're lying. The theater is full of stories of partnerships that didn't last, that broke up, but yours.
You go
I
on.
wish I had a funny answer for it. I don't. It's, I don't know, we're on the same wavelength, you know. We have a kind of a radar between us. We've always laughed at the same things, have been interested in the same things, and hated a lot of the same things. And we just found a kind of rapport, so there's almost like a shorthand between us, and we can finish each other's sentences. And there's been remarkably little friction.
Have you ever been in situations, Tom Jones and Harvey Schmidt told me that David Merrick used to rule by dividing and conquer. Have you ever been in that situation where someone is trying to pull you apart in some way?
To get between Adolph and me? No, it might be between us and the composer, or us and the director.
You are one.
We are one. I guess so. We're thought of as a unit, and you know, and it worked. So that's why we stuck together. We used to say we stayed together out of sheer terror. The terror of breaking up and, you know, going our separate ways.
And having reporters like me calling up saying, why did you break up?
Why did you break up? Yeah.
Just easier to stay together.
And then there was never any romance between us, which I think was a very good thing.
Probably one of the most highly
I recommend
ideas,
that in teams. Yeah. No, I was married to a marvelous man, Stephen Kyle, most of my life. And Adolph's married to Phyllis Newman.
Right.
And we never got confused. Maybe the public did, but we never did.
You said somewhere that you and Adolph Green, you feel that you haven't made it yet.
Well, yeah.
Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, we feel potential, which I think.
The party's over. It's time to call it a day. They've burst your pretty balloon and taken the moon away.
It's time to wind up the masquerade. Just make your mind up. The piper must be paid.
The party's over. The candles flicker and dim. You danced and dreamed through the night. It seemed to be right just being with him.
Now you must wake up. All dreams must end.
Take off your makeup. The party's over. It's all over. My friend.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
Playbill Online is the official website of Theater Talk and the home of the Playbill Club, providing information and opportunities for theater lovers. We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.